This message is prohibited.
And welcome to another episode of Taboo Talks, and I'm here with another lovely guest today, Nelsie Yang. She is the city council member of Ward 6 in St. Paul, here in your local area. If you already don't know what the podcast is about, Taboo Talks is all about talking about anything and everything, controversy under the sun, and remembering to always put like a human perspective so that we all can be more empathetic towards each other at the end of the day. So as much as that's really about all I know about you, Nelsie. Like, is there anything else that you think is really important that other people should really know about?
Yeah, definitely. I can share a bit more about myself. I am the youngest and also the first Hmong woman ever elected to the St. Paul City Council.
Yeah.
So I identify as a young person. I'm 24 years old. I am a daughter of Hmong refugees. I'm also the youngest in my family. I have 4 older siblings, 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and all of us, along with our my parents too, we all live in St. Paul together.
Okay.
And so I represent the east side of St. Paul, and some more things about me. Like, I come from a social work background, and really caring and fighting for communities and really fighting for justice is something that I have always felt really passionate about. And I think it comes a lot from my upbringing with my parents, like seeing them always go out and help the community, even when we were a family, like living in poverty, where we were a low-income family, always struggling and living paycheck to paycheck. I saw how humble they were and really giving as well. And I think that I grew up having those things really embedded in me. And so, yeah, those are the things that I wanted to share right off the bat.
Cool. So I know that we're a little crunched for time. So one of the main things that I know that I've seen on your website about your campaign was, well, 2 things. It was economic stability for working families, and then economic stability for small businesses and small business owners. And so I kind of want to frame this in a way, and maybe it might help, maybe it might not be so helpful, but I don't know if you're a history buff, for one, and then about FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal that happened during the Great Depression. So a part of the New Deal, for everybody listening as well, is that in the New Deal, there's like 3 phases. So the first one is the phase of relief. The second one was the relief, recovery, and then reform. And so I believe it was those 3. And so the idea was like, yeah, obviously relief is just kind of like immediate, like Band-Aid, first aid, kind of like treatment for economic situation. And then recovery was like the middle portion. And then reform is like long-term, like, okay, how can we like actually make it so that we can lessen the amount or percentage of insufficient like wealth within our community. And so in terms of like, let's start with the working families. Like, what are your like kind of like immediate, middle, and then long-term kind of like ideas? I don't want to say solutions, because like you never know what's a solution until after the matter. So like, what are your ideas? Like, I really want to get down into like what do you think is really like, what do you see, and then what do you think can really help out?
Help out working families.
Yeah, in particular working families, because I think there's a whole like push and pull between like working families and small business owners, especially with the idea of the minimum wage being raised up. Yeah.
There's definitely a lot that I can share about that, and I think that for me, I would first off want to approach this conversation talking about how important it is to really like evaluate, like, first off, who our system are to this day, like our system around around like businesses and the working class, like and everything, like everything about around wages and like employee benefits, like who is that really built to work for? Because
Yes.
I think that when we come from that perspective, then we really understand why it isn't working to this day, and why we continue seeing working families really struggle, because I mean, the system wasn't obviously not built by them. It's built by, we could trace it back all the way back to the earliest times, when like slavery was still here. I mean, folks who were here, predominantly white folks, like they were here. They were the folks in power, and they were the ones who built, everything from our Constitution to what we have today, and it's still being perpetuated. And so I look at that because I'm mentioning that because when I think about my upbringing, I didn't understand that there was a system in place. To me, as somebody who was living in a family where we struggle, we live paycheck to paycheck, the most important thing was, how do I grow up, get a college degree, get this like dream job that would pay me a whole bunch of money so that I can, I'm rich and my family were not struggling. That was my biggest thing. Yeah. And I think that that's the mindset of so many of our working class families. And then we get into this whole, we get trapped into this belief that, okay, if I just work hard enough, then my life will turn out the way I expected it to, and I should be good. Well, even myself, and I know so many other families too who have followed this path, but they're still struggling to this day. And they're still, working class individuals or families. And so, to me, it teaches me, okay, this whole mindset around working hard, like that's actually a very false, story or narrative that exists. And if we want to really like liberate and really champion our working families, then we need to take a look at how our system is currently operating and really change it to work for our families. And so, and the whole piece about like relief. I mean, if I think that for me, as somebody who comes from a social work background, like the most immediate relief would be making sure that we have people and resources to be able to support working families directly. And that's like our nonprofit organizations, our community organizations, or, things like, our food shelters that are here that can do things right on the spot, because we know that changing our system takes so long. I mean, if we wanted to get that done, I mean, I think that you and I, we can wait our whole lives for that. We might not see exactly what we want. And so that's why we have to really, build and work on this from different angles, which is like the piece about relief. And so, and then the next step further, I think that it would be, the reason why I do a lot of like campaigning work to get people who are like-minded like me, who care about things like paying people living wages, making sure that workers have earned sick and safe time, and so much more, is like, when we can get like policies into place that really protect workers and make sure that, we have like employers or entrepreneurs who are practicing these very, these healthy, positive labor practices. It's like, it's a win-win for everybody. And the truth is, like, us getting there, it's not, when we get there, it's not even like that, we're starting to do things right, but that's actually what we should have been doing a long time ago. So we're just trying to really play catch up. And so I think that, putting those policies into place is like really, really important. And to take it a step further, I think the whole piece about reform here is really, I think that the reform piece is all of what I talked about. And if we can really transform like our system, like that would be like, phenomenal. That's how we make drastic changes in people's lives. And I'm not so sure about the three-stage thing, that president, is that right? Like they talked about? Yeah. I'm not familiar with it, but I'm just sharing with you the things that I care deeply about, and what I revolve my work around as a council member. Yeah.
Okay. So in light of our current situation, or our current like economic situation, obviously the candidates they're being elected, not yesterday, 2 days ago.
The presidential primary, right?
The primaries. I hope everybody went out there to go vote.
Me too.
But It's okay if you didn't. It's already passed, so there's no point of mulling over it. But one of the hot topics is obviously raising the minimum wage, or the new idea that kind of like, maybe not, it's not a new idea, but the resurgence of the universal basic income from Yang. Even though he's not in the running anymore, I think that that idea is pretty big, and obviously, it's such a big topic to talk about, and 30 minutes is not enough. But yeah, so let's just say, obviously, if someone does get elected, minimum wage as Republican or Democratic Party is an issue, just because poverty lines throughout the course of history have changed, and our current minimum isn't enough to, one, sustain the working families that you really have been talking about. But then if we raise those minimum wages, it also it affects the small businesses as well, because then now let's say, I mean, it'd be easier for a big business to kind of like allocate for those things, but for a small business owner, it wouldn't be as easy. And so where's the happy medium between working families and small businesses? Because as one gains a leg up, the other one in effect essentially loses a little bit of its balance,
Mm-hmm. I feel like you bring up a really hot question that always gets asked whenever we talk about raising the minimum wage. And I think that it is really valid, like, because when I did organizing, like my first time hearing about the minimum wage itself, with the $15 minimum wage specifically, I had questions around that as well. And the reason why, for me, why I am very supportive of us making sure that all across our country, that not only small businesses are paying a minimum wage that's at least 15, but that also big corporations are paying that as well, is because I know that when we can, that money is actually circulated in our community, and that if people could, they would go and like support a small business over a big corporation if they had the means to be able to do that. But that's actually so much harder for us to do if we had an option to choose between like a corporate store that was maybe like selling something for $1 less. I mean, right. They get to do that. These I'll be honest, these corporations, they get to do that because they get so much privilege that our small businesses don't. And I think that that's the part where injustice, I feel so deep in my gut and feel so angered. It's because we give so much privilege to corporations and not people. Okay, because corporations are not people. Yes. We give so much privilege to them, like giving them tax breaks, and do we do the same for small businesses that are actually like the most vital thing to our community? No, we don't. And so my question whenever I get asked this whole dynamic around small businesses versus corporations, I'm like, well, if we are here to create a win-win situation for everyone, and we want for small businesses to be able to pay living wages, then we actually need to be working together to make sure that we're holding corporations accountable to paying people livable wages, so that more money will actually come from out of their pockets, right, and coming back into our community. And I think that I think that it really takes a time to be able to change that narrative and that story, because I think overall, like, we've just been so used to believing, okay, like, if I want to get paid more, I got to work harder, and a living wage I got to work hard for that. Well, well, everyone needs to have food on the table. Everyone needs to be able to pay for the bills and for the house or whatnot. And so we need to make it a standard that in the U.S. here that everyone deserves a living wage. And to me, that's the bottom line, you know. And I think that's something that we all need to strive for.
For sure. There's a lot of angles that I want to take this. So I didn't get the chance to tell you earlier, but for everybody also listening, my role here is mainly to be like devil's advocate almost.
Yeah.
And so one thing I do want to play the DA on is the idea of the tax breaks, right? Where, you know, corporations, one way that corporations get tax breaks is by donating, or not by donating, but investing money back into another thing, whether it be an institution or a charity or research and development. All those categories have different money valuations, where if like right now, I think if you spend $1 into research and development towards technology, you get $1 back as a tax credit, essentially. And so on one hand, big corporations are getting those tax breaks because they're investing into things that the country that progresses the nation forward. But then again, to the other side of what you also said was that there are a lot of privileges given to those big corporations, mainly because they are pushing, they are helping the economy forward, whether people can see it or not because of our situation. And so what I really want to tackle on is the idea of working families. So like for you, helping the working families and the small businesses owners, like what ideally does that look like to you? If you were to help out one family to your ideal vision of what, you know, of what you would like to do here in office, like what would that look like for that one family?
What would it look like so that they, can you kind of rephrase it?
Yeah.
So parts in it.
Yeah. So you said that you want to help like working families to have a living wage, right? So what does that look like? A working family living in a having a living wage. Describe to me what would I don't want to say describe to me what their house looks like, but like I want to paint a picture for everybody listening and everybody viewing. It's just like, you know, we can talk about all the ambiguities and like talk about big ideas and things like that, but I really want to like paint a picture that people could truly understand.
So I wanted to go back and touch base on the piece you talked about where like corporations, you know, they give a lot, right? They have the means to be able to put a bunch of money into all these, like, you know, maybe charity organizations, or to invest it back into the community. And they would also have the means. That means that they would also have the means to be able to pay their workers living wages, to be able to do things that, you know, actually support their employees, to be able to have a dignified life. And I for those that are doing that, I think that that's great. You know, I think that that's good. They should continue doing that. And then on the other side, you have corporations that know they can get away without having to do that, because we don't have a government, nor do we have enough people representing, you know, us in office who really believe in this whole concept around people having dignified lives, and are not willing to pass, you know, really like bold policies, like, you know, making sure people get at least a $15 living wage. And so that's where the really big inequity comes in. And so, you know, I feel I understand where you're coming from, right. And I also feel like if you have the means to be able to do something, right, then don't push back, you know, and do the right thing and invest in the community, and so I wanted to name that.
Definitely.
But the piece about so I'll go back to the part I said about people living dignified lives. I think that when you have a job where you feel safe, you're in a positive environment, you make a wage that allows you to be able to keep up with your bills. You can where you don't have to live paycheck to paycheck, where your rent is no more than 30% of your income. Like that is to me what I would want us, at minimum, I would want us to get there. I mean, I think that all of us, we have different visions of what a dignified life looks like for us, but I feel like those are the bare minimums. And I mean, let's even talk about healthcare. Right now, there are people in our community, people across the country, who don't have healthcare because maybe they don't have a job, or they don't meet the qualifications to be able to get public healthcare. And so they're like, they fall through the cracks. They can't even go to the hospital because if they do, then bam, here comes a bill in the mail, and you have to pay maybe like, I'll just even mention my friend, like her baby had a choking experience, and now they have to come up with $30,000 to be able to cover for treatment, or for basically treatment for their child. And who has, what working family like has that money, just laying around in the bank, especially when healthcare is something that is so vital to our human life. Like we need to be able to go to the hospital, to go to the dentist, to be able to have a pair of glasses if we need that. And like, why do we have to basically be left with nothing just so we could have something so basic? That really violates my values. And so I think that the whole conversation around like, what do I want for working families? Well, it's about I want everyone all across the nation to have health care. So fighting for a universal single payer health care is something that I care deeply about. I mean, other countries have that. Done it, and so I'm just like thinking, what is so fundamentally wrong with our country where they think that everything is just all about how do I make profit and keep money in my own pocket so that I'm at the top. I mean, that's a very that mindset stems so much from racism, from white supremacy, from a system where only certain people, classism, so where only certain people are the ones who are benefiting at the price of the majority. And that's really sad, and I think that even though in the US here we might think of ourselves as a very great country, which we are, there are components of it. I think that other people look at us and they actually really pity us for how we treat our citizens or treat people in our community, and that a lot of folks deserve more. And for me, those folks, it's working families, and when we break that down even more, our working families, they're struggling right now. There are folks of color, our LGBTQ community, people who are from marginalized communities, and they're hurting. And I think that more than ever, I feel we need people who are stepping up, not just in political office, but in their community, in their family household, speaking up and being the ones to raise questions, ask hard questions, and say, we need to see that we are worth it and we deserve more, and that we need to start finding a pathway to getting there. That's what I would want to see.
Okay, for sure. So I want to talk also that you bring up a good point about having universal healthcare. I think that's really super. I think it's really helpful. Many people out there would probably say that you're very socialist, you're very communist for thinking like that. But it goes back to what you're saying, that there's basic needs that everybody needs to have filled. I'm getting the sense that you're for me, how I would describe it, I like to call myself a translator. I'm trying to make that term a more use the term. Like
Yeah.
you say something and I try to translate what you
Sure.
said in different words. Like we use different words, but we're saying the same thing. And so for me, a lot of what you have been talking about really resonates to going back to 3 hours I mentioned earlier about relief. Providing that kind of like, this is an immediate relief that people need to have. And it also goes back to Maslow's like hierarchy of needs. You need, before you even need like romantic love, I put romantic in front of it because anyways, before you reach love, you need to have a stable place to live, you need to have food, you need to have shelter, clothing, things like that, right? And so but once we get there, and this is where multiple people in the spectrum of the 3 R's, like where people usually stand, would you rather stand on reform? Would you rather stand on recovery or relief? Or I feel like that in itself is a spectrum. And for most people, or the term saying that, hey, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, for some people, once they get that immediate relief, they don't have the motivation to do something further beyond that relief, because now they've experienced whatever feelings that they have getting that relief. And so to you, what does the term wealth mean to you? I don't know if you've thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's probably a very technical definition for it.
Sure.
Like if I were to look it up in the dictionary, I'd probably be able to just pull that up for you. But I think that, for me, my definition for wealth is, well, I think that my immediate reaction is, it always comes down to, money, like how much money you have, how much you have in assets, and, even something like a home. Do you have a home? Because like having a home is wealth. It's something that you can maybe pass down to your children or whoever comes after you, and people can inherit that. So to me, it's something that is inheritable, and something that I want all of us to be able to have, because it's it's security in our life, and the reality of our working class families, like having that. I know families who don't even who don't have a home, or who are just even trying to think, who aspire to want to run a business, but they don't even make enough right now to be able to even get to where they want to be in that dream. And it probably will take them decades to be able to like start that dream, unless they do something, unless there is like really a big change in their life where they get an opportunity to make higher wages. And so that's what wealth is to me. And when I talk about really wanting to this whole desire to like build wealth in our communities, it's that, and it's what I aspire to work on, like in my everyday work in the council here. And I don't think that we can do that without talking intersectionally around housing, around wages and a job, and a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that something that we don't often think about too is how our community, like our environment, our surrounding, is built to set us up for that success too. Like if you live in a community where maybe there isn't even a public transit close by to you, or if there isn't a workforce center where it's like a place where you can just go in and get training to get a job or something, then imagine like how deprived that community is from actually being able to build wealth. And so having very walkable, very accessible communities, that are, you know, very diverse in like housing, in transit and everything is like really important. And I think that these very micro level decision making about how a city is built and everything, and what it looks like is work that's done by city staff, by city council. And that's why my role in the city council is so important to me, you know, and why I love the work that I do, because I really get to shape what my ward looks like and what my city looks like. Whereas at the state level work, they have, state level work, like they can, you know, jump into the conversation as well, but a council member just does that work so much more closely.
Yeah, definitely. You bring up a great point, and I do want to say that there's a saying out there where your life, your zip code is more predictive of where your life will end up, so versus who you know. Like, so it really talks to your point. And the reason I bring up wealth is because, shameless plug, I will be talking at a conference. It's called the Hmong Men Conference that Chat is putting on, the Center for Hmong Arts. And so they're putting up a conference that's happening on April 25th. Everybody go check it out and come through. You don't have to be Hmong to be there, but it's really geared towards young men. And so I do want to challenge your idea of wealth, and I will be talking about this more in depth at the conference, is that and I want to draw a distinction between like what is being rich and what is being wealthy. Is there a difference there? Because you know, at the end of it all, I think being wealthy is a way deeper thing than being rich. Like, rich is the shallow level, or like the physical manifestation of wealth. But wealth in itself is like a deep well, and being rich is basically the bucket of water that you pull up.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and so, you know, just being conscious.
I would love to be there. So I'll check it out. I've seen it on Facebook, so I'm really happy to hear that you're going to be a speaker there. Yeah.
Me and a couple of other people that I know, friends, that they're also speaking there. Just again, plug for everybody listening. You don't have to be Hmong to go there. But
or a man, is that correct?
Yeah, you don't have to be a man either. But it will be geared towards that demographic. But so what I want to kind of like shift this towards, I don't know if we're gonna have enough time. If we cut it, it's okay. But so one of the big things in my life is that that I kind of like am living by currently, is that you can't become you can't get to where you want to be until you've become that vision already. Meaning that, and the example that I mainly use, I need to find a better example, but the example I mainly use is like, hey, if you in order to work at the best hospital in the world, you have to already be the best doctor. It's not vice versa, where being at the best hospital will make you into the best doctor. So in order to become, or to get to where you want to be, you have to become what you need to be in order to get there. And one of my friends, he talked about the story of Ang Lee, the guy who made Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and the Life of Pi. So he's a director. Basically, the story of his story is that it took him 10 years after graduating from college to actually land the opportunity to propel him in his career. And the idea there is that you need to work hard to where you need to go. And he couldn't become he couldn't become the director he is known for unless he's already been that director for a long time, and then now people just start picking it up and they're like, oh, we're realizing it now, like, you're an amazing person and like you make great things, like, but in reality he's probably been already making all those things along the way, and it just now people are starting to realize it's kind of like for an artist, you're more famous after you die. Definitely, I'm definitely afraid of that. I would rather be more famous alive than dead.
Yeah, totally.
But it's that idea that like you can't reach that level of skill, place, dreams, visions for yourself until you behave like that person that is in that dream that you have. And so in terms of economic status, I think that people have those ideas of like, hey, like, let's get it. I want to have the big car. I want to have the big house. I want to have all these, like the jewelry, for guys, they want to have like the girl, they want to have, or many, or they just want to have a lot of partners. And that's their, a very common vision of wealth. And I think that's it doesn't speak to the level of work, definition, depth that you need to have to really get there. Like you can win the lottery and get rich, but that doesn't mean that you're wealthy. And so that I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Also a little sneak peek for the conference.
Okay. Awesome.
We mainly talked about working families, and we can cut it whenever you need to head out. But
I think I have until
like it's already 4.
4. Okay. Yeah. I mean, like I have a meeting at 4:30.
Okay.
So it'll maybe be like a 15-minute drive. So about 5 minutes more would be okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll just end it here. I have we didn't really get to talk about small businesses, but we could save it for next time, as always.
We could definitely do a follow-up if you want.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I just want to, I'll add something quickly about the small businesses part 2. I think that we are at a point in our country, and I say country because I feel like St. Paul is a part of the United States, and whatever is happening, like the things that I'm talking about around living wages, about everyone having health care, it's not just a conversation happening in St. Paul, but it is it's happening all over the nation. And even more importantly, I feel like it's being heavily driven by our working class people, young people who are in so much debt right now because of college tuition and so much more, and especially our elders who are getting priced out when we leave them out of the conversation and they're on a fixed income. And I feel like these things are what we are working to achieve. Like I said earlier, like we live in a system that has really failed us, because these are things that we have always needed. We have always needed these things, and our system, it was just built to actually not get us there. And so we're at a point when we're getting quicker and quicker to getting to where we want to be, and that's not to say that we don't care about the small businesses, but we do. And I think that for us to be able to bring them into the vision as well, I think that part of it is really us working collectively together, and listening to each other and talking about this being a win for everybody, because our small businesses get stepped down on every single day, probably without even knowing it. And when we can do things like hold big corporations accountable, and hold them accountable to the point where if they are actually being really unjust and having really bad practices in their community, in their workplace, and those services actually come to small businesses, this is the reality of what probably will start happening, when we can actually work toward corporate accountability and stop allowing corporations to do things to harm families, harm individuals, and harm their own workers. So I think that I'm really excited to talk about that more, and I understand the part about this the devil's advocate piece, coming from the perspective of small businesses, because our economy has always been pitched where it's always been like small businesses versus working families, small businesses, being categorized, you know, as like partners with corporations, but I don't think that's always the case, you know, like they're definitely we definitely cannot view those two things as the same, like small businesses and big corporations, because they're just two completely different things that maybe have a common goal, but are looking really differently when you really look inside.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree not to lump those two things together. So with that, where can we find you? Anything about you? Social media, yada yada.
I am on Facebook, so my council page, if you look up St. Paul Councilmember Nelsie Yang, then you will find updates about what's happening in our office here, what kind of work am I moving or working on in my office as well. I also have my campaign page too, because every 4 years I have to run, you know, for re-election, and also I still work on campaign as well for other candidates who share the same values and visions as I do, because I know that you know, I can't do this work alone. It takes other folks, you know, in other levels of government to be working, you know, in coalition with, so we can get it done. And so that's why I choose to campaign, you know, during the time that I'm not working at the city hall here. And so if you look up my my campaign page, then you can find that it's called Nelsie Yang for St. Paul City Council. And we are on Twitter as well for the campaign page. However, Facebook just, you know, it's more accessible for our staff right now. We're looking for more volunteers to help us like manage all these social media platforms. So if anyone is interested, like, I'd be more than happy to bring them onto the team. And then you can also contact me for council related questions, or if you want to interview me as well, you can contact our council phone number or email. And if you just look up St. Paul Ward 6 City Council and Google that, then we are the first to pop up. And so if you email or call us, you'll get in touch with my staff. No later than 24 business hours is what we aim for.
Okay. Awesome. And so I'm TabooThao, guys. If you don't already know, you can find me at everything TabooThao on Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts now, SoundCloud, YouTube, and I think those are all the platforms I'm currently on. I'm trying to get on TikTok. I haven't pushed myself there yet. But yeah, that's where you can find me. Again, this is Nelsie Yang, City Council member of Ward 6 here in St. Paul. And yeah.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah.